Most business owners using AI for copy are doing the same thing. They open Claude, type "write me a Facebook ad," get something back that sounds generic, or like a robot, or like a sleazy salesman, and then they spend an hour trying to fix it. Or they run it anyway and wonder why no one clicks. The problem isn't the fact that you use AI. If I were to tell you that in order to write good copy, you had to do it manually, I would be lying. Because I know lots of amazing copywriters who use AI. The difference between you and them is what I'm about to cover in this video. And it's not that you have to get a creative writing degree. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through 3 things. 1, why AI copy comes out generic even when your prompt is decent. 2, the exact process we use to produce marketing copy with AI that actually converts cold traffic into booked calls. And 3rd, the one principle that determines whether the whole thing works or falls apart. And this is the same process that we implement for our clients at Margin Maxing when we build their full acquisition systems. VSL, ad scripts, emails, landing pages, all of it is built alongside with AI, but none of it sounds like AI. So let me walk you through this. Okay, so I want to explain the difference between AI generated and AI augmented. So AI generated, you basically just one shot. You just copy paste one big thing into AI and then you ask it to write copy for you, whether it's an ad script or rewrite your landing page or something. You might copy paste your website body text and use that as context. But outside of that, you're just saying, here's my landing page, here's my offer, and from that, make me ad scripts, or from that, make me a VSL, or from that, make me a post. And when you're doing this, you're allowing AI to do the thinking. AI is making the copy. AI is writing for you. AI is doing 90 to 95% of the work. So AI is doing 95% of the work, but you get a bad output. And this is where you get into this cycle of feeding AI, trying to one-shot it, it doesn't one-shot, and then you are constantly trying to edit it. And the problem with AI that we've come across is once you start giving it context and once it starts creating something in a chat, it's really hard to get it to cleanly fix things. We found that it's better if you have an error or if you did something wrong in a chat with AI, it's better to just start a new chat than to try to fix it. AI isn't really good at fixing itself. It's better to just start a new chat and refeed it better, cleaner information. Now, what we mean by AI augmented is that we do the thinking, we give the context, and we make the decisions. AI just expands upon this. So I would say AI does like 75 to 80% of the writing. But this 75 to 80%, it's not one time. We also put it through a process. So there's multiple steps and multiple checkpoints. And these checkpoints are where we will be making manual edits, we'll be cutting things out, making sure that the output is clean for the next input, for the next step. And I just wanted to say, when I say context, like I know some of you might think like, oh, well, I've fed it all of my information. I scraped all my pages and I put all my testimonials and whatever into it. But copying and pasting a bunch of information is just not going to cut it. It's not enough. It all comes down to the order in which that you give AI things. You can't just give it a whole bunch of things and tell it to use it. So the question is, what are the right inputs and what's the right order to put them in? So that's what we're going to go over first, and then we'll get into the actual process. So when we onboard a client, we have a clear process that we go through where one step feeds into the next step. So the first step is sales data. The second step is market research. The third step is the creative brief. The fourth step is the offer. The fifth step is the VSL. Then is the emails. And finally, we make the ads. So this is the process that we always go through. And as you can see, before anything actually gets made in terms of assets, whether it's, in fact, it actually includes all of these. So before we make the VSL, and obviously in here we'll also make the landing page. But the point is, all of these things are assets. These are basically all the outcomes, right? Now, in order for these outcomes to be made, we need to create the inputs. So there's this middle stage where you're actually using AI to create inputs to feed back into AI. And even within this, every step feeds into the next. So every step becomes the perfect input for the next step. And in between every single process, there's manual editing. So there's manual editing here, here, and then obviously between all of these, there's going to be manual editing as well. Now, the reason we have these checkpoints is because the way that you input into AI, it's everything. The order that you put information in, what information you put in, the amount of information that you put in. So we need to be reading everything and making sure that there's no fluff and no noise, because one of the main issues with AI is a lack of signal. What I mean by signal is AI has a tendency to over-explain, go into the weeds, and basically create or fill whatever space that you give it. So it will fill, like if you give it a broad topic or something to research, for example, it's going to fill as much information as possible. Whether that's actual data or inferred, you have to kind of figure that out. And that's where the manual process comes in. So in order to get a clear signal, you need to be editing. And editing early is more important than editing later, because trying to fix errors after you've already went down the whole process and now you're trying to edit assets, like whether it's an ad script or a VSL script, when the inputs weren't clean, you're going to be spending a lot of time editing. And there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to cut. This is because AI expands whatever you give it. So if there's any sort of inconsistency or nuance in what you feed it that isn't accurate, or it isn't relevant, or it isn't effective in terms of copy, it's going to be blended in each step, where it becomes harder and harder to pinpoint that error. Every step that goes along, there's more information and more information. For example, in the sales data, which we'll go into, if there's a pain point that only one person said, and it's not actually, it's kind of like a edge case, right? But you leave it in there. Even when you do market research, it's still going to affect the output of that. It's kind of blended in there because you've already kind of told AI something and it's going to accept it as truth. And then from there, it's going to show up in the creative brief and it's going to be blended into the offer, and then it's going to be blended into the VSL. So editing early is more important than editing later. And again, this is about nuance. So what I mean about nuance is that in order to have effective copy, it needs to be relevant. And if you have a VSL, for example, that kind of digs into a pain point that might be an edge case, or it might not be your main pain point, the VSL itself is just not going to hit as well. It's just not going to be as effective. So that's where clarity and cleanliness come in. All right, so let's actually get into each step. So the first step is sales data. So sales data is taken from sales calls. It's taken from client satisfaction forms, any sort of data that you can get from your actual clients and what they have said, as well as prospects, not just clients. You want to know what the most common pain points, desires, situations that your ideal clients are experiencing. So you want to talk to your sales team, or if you're the one taking the sales calls, you want to go through all of the sales calls that you have. Hopefully you're recording them, and hopefully you're already using an AI like Fathom that takes transcripts. And this process will be much easier. But you basically want to take all of this data and get the most common concerns, objections, questions, assumptions, meaning like about your service, what do they assume coming in? And then of course, pain points, desires, and situations. And you're going to take all of this and you're going to use this as ammo in all of your copy. So if you were to just take your website, for example, it doesn't have every concern, every objection, every question, every assumption, unless you already have a banger landing page. But even then, usually landing pages or your website, it's not going to have everything. And the other thing about this is there might be pain points or objections or situations or desires that you haven't noticed. Maybe you know the most common ones, but maybe there's like another angle that keeps coming up that's just kind of like a secondary pain point or a more subtle desire. And the thing about copy and ads specifically is you want as many angles as possible that are actually relevant. So the other thing that you want to look for is why your best clients chose you. Like, why do your current clients choose you over your competitors? Now, what AI is going to do is it's going to take all of this and it's going to organize it. And it's really good at doing that. But the collection is human work. You have to collect all this information and feed it. And ideally, you should make a document here. Every step we create a new document. So this is the sales data document. And the reason that we do this is because the sales doc stays clean. It doesn't get changed or updated as we move on to the next level. It can always be fed into something if we need to extract a specific pain point or a specific objection or something like that. So again, you just want to make sure that you're not including real edge cases. Like you can have them, but only if you think that it's going to be applicable enough where you would actually spend money on an ad. If you're confident enough to spend money on an ad for that specific objection or question or pain point, that's kind of an edge case, then you can keep it in. So now you have all the raw data. This is all raw. Now you need to fact check it. And you need to back it up with third-party data and add to it with third-party data. So that's where we get into the market research. So we're basically fact-checking all the data that we got from the sales calls. We're also looking at competitors. Like, what are the common things that they're saying? What are the gaps? Like, what are the things that you have found in your clients that are not being said or outspoken in competitor ads? Assuming that they've been fact-checked, right? And also, besides fact-checking, we're also finding more relevant pain points, desires, etc. So we're basically beefing up and adding to our sales data because you might have like 100 sales call transcripts. A lot of it is going to be just speaking, right? So the AI has to sort through all of that. And at the end of the day, you might only have like a few objections, pain points, desires. And market research is going to get all the data as much as possible. So basically AI is finding patterns. It's pretty good at this. And it's pretty good at doing research too. But your job is to cut the fluff. You need to cut the fluff because there's going to be a lot of fluff. And for example, you might have a lot of sources in the document that it created, but those sources don't really support anything specific. It might just be about something about your service, or it might just be about a topic. And you want to just make sure that you go through all of it and you comb through all of it because it's not, again, we're not one-shotting anything. You want to go through everything. Basically, what you want is you want these documents to be as short as possible. You want it to be as little information as possible, ironically. But that information is accurate, dense, relevant, and effective. And that's going to make effective copy. So next is the language bank. Basically, the language bank is just doing research on your client's language because the way that you talk about your service and the way that your client talks about your service is different. And you can do this by browsing on Reddit, Facebook, basically any forums. And you're going to take all that data and put this into a doc. And you can use AI for this. You don't need to manually go through Reddit or Facebook. But this is important because 50% of effective copy is using the correct language. Because it's not just terminology, it's also the way that things are explained. Someone can explain a pain point completely differently than another person. And especially if someone outside is trying to look in and explain someone else's specific problem, unless you have a language bank like this that has the context of how those people explain it, you're probably not going to do as well of a job. Okay, so now you have these, this is the research phase, right? And now we're going to take all of these three things and move it into the next phase, which starts with the creative brief. Now, the creative brief is basically a Bible of your ideal client. So this has all the pain points, situations, desires. It has all the context, and it puts all of this into a narrative. And what that means is a narrative is basically a story. It's a explanation for someone's situation in a descriptive and accurate, but also emotional way. And when I say emotional, it's still accurate, right? But we're explaining in depth what this person is going through. And we're explaining the first principles, the second principles, like all of the things that occur because of this problem. So the main thing here is what you actually put into the prompt for this creative brief. We have a multi-step process for creating this brief because it's so important that it's done right. Because if it's not done right, it's going to sound like a car salesman, or it's going to sound like you're trying to sell coaching to someone. If you're B2B specifically, this is really important because you don't want to sound like a coach, right? So the way that you approach this is really important. And we have a 20-step process actually for doing this creative brief. Ultimately, it takes the situation of your client and how you bridge the gap to fix that problem for them. So from the creative brief, we then make the VSL, and from that, the landing page and the ad scripts and all of that, right? Oh yeah, and we also build the offer. So I made a video about this that you can watch. I'll put a link to it. The offer takes your service and packages it into a more attractive offer for cold traffic specifically. So really briefly, like the structure of this is a clear outcome plus a clear mechanism plus a clear timeline, and then sometimes a risk reversal. And if you want to learn more about this, just check out my video on cold traffic offers. But basically, once you have the offer and you have the creative brief, you put those into the VSL. And we start with this because this is like the main narrative of your entire funnel. It's a 5 to 10 minute video, usually. And it educates the prospect on who you are, what you do, how you fix their issue, what makes you different from your competitors, why they should choose you. And it handles all the objections. It reveals the price. It reveals everything so that the person on the page can, one, determine if your service is even meant for them. And this helps really well with qualifying prospects coming in so that the people that you're talking to are not going to be wasting your time. And it also helps them make a decision quicker. So if they are a qualified prospect, but they're not sure, like they're on the fence about it, the whole point of the marketing funnel is to help a prospect make a decision as quickly as possible. Whether it's yes or no, we don't want them to be wasting their time or our time. And that's mainly what the VSL does. And it also builds trust because if someone spends 5 minutes watching a video of you explaining your services and how you're different and how you can help them, they're going to be much more likely to convert later down the road when they actually do get on a call with you. Now, I will say up until here, I can confidently say that you can figure out how to do this yourself. But once you get to the VSL, this is where another source needs to come in, and that is purely marketing data. These are best practices 2026 specifically because there's a lot of outdated marketing information out there. It's a whole bunch of examples of VSLs that actually work and convert in 2026. You need the whole structure of the VSL because the VSL can be structured in multiple different ways and it depends on the specific audience that you're targeting. For example, if you are targeting a certain demographic of buyers, if you use the wrong language, the wrong pacing, the wrong length, you can actually see a decrease in conversion rates. This is the point where we start feeding our marketing data into every single step. So if you don't have access to this, that's okay. I would say that you versus another business owner who hasn't done all of this, you're going to be twice as effective as them. But I'm just being transparent. A huge part of this process from here on out is the marketing data plus all of the specific research that we have for your service and your client specifically. So from the VSL, we make all the back-end content. Now these are value-dense emails, videos, and content retargeting. I'm going to make a video on this back-end system in the future because it's so important. Like you can only do so much on the front end for cold traffic and get them on the calendar. But if you are having trouble with show rates and or close rates, the back-end sales system is absolutely imperative for closing cold traffic and getting them to show up. These emails, videos, and content, they all handle objections, answer questions, give best and worst case scenarios, set expectations, and basically do all the research for your prospect. Because once the prospect books in, they've made a commitment. There's two modes of a prospect looking at information, and this applies to everyone. It's a human thing. So really quick, there's the scanning mode and the research mode. I know my handwriting is really bad, but scanning is basically before they make any commitment. So they're looking at the ad, they're clicking on the ad. That's not a commitment because they're still just looking, right? They're watching the video, they're scrolling your landing page. They're trying to do this to make a decision as quickly as possible. And that's why, going back to the VSL is so important because it helps them make the best decision possible because you're giving them as much information as possible so that they can make an educated decision based off of what they've seen to then book in. So they're going to consume as little information as possible to make a decision, but after they book in, they enter the research phase. So the research phase is where now they're going to try to justify everything. Now they're trying to justify why they just booked a call. And that means they're going to want to know as much information as possible. If you don't have information ready for them right then and there, they're going to have to do research on their own, which means looking you up, going on Reddit, looking up your service in general and just kind of going down rabbit holes, or they're not going to do any research and they're going to completely forget about it. There's two types of people. One does the research and the other one doesn't, and then they just forget about it and they drop off. And those are usually the people who ghost you. The people who do the research, the thing about the internet is there's good and bad information about everything, whether it's true or not. There's always different opinions. So if they're already going to do research on their own, you might as well do the research for them. And that's why we have a thank you page. And this thank you page has a bunch of videos on it. So actually it looks like this. You have the page, there's one main video here, and there's a bunch of breakout videos where they're answering one specific question, objection, just all the most common things that come up, whether it's on a sales call. And then those videos are repurposed into emails that have even more information. These are value dense emails. And then we also have content, and these come in the forms of reels, posts, text, on whatever platform it is that your prospect is using the most. And we're going to be specifically targeting that prospect with that content. And it all just answers as many questions as possible. And we use AI to help us write these because AI can pull from all of the data that we did here, all of the research. So all of this is accurate, and that's why it's so effective. So all in all, you can either use AI as a shortcut or a tool. If you're using AI as a shortcut, you're trying to skip thinking, you're trying to skip effort, and you're trying to save time. But what that does is it gives you a generic output, which requires heavy revision and takes a lot of time because ultimately you're going to spend time revising it and editing it, and it might not even be good. So it might have just been a waste of time. If you use it as a tool, you do all the thinking, you do all the editing, but you do these in checkpoints and you don't one shot, right? One shot means just throwing everything into one prompt. You're doing it by steps. Everything is clean. And that's actually how you save time. That's actually how you use AI to your advantage to find patterns, gather information, and organize everything so that you can create the best copy and most effective copy possible. So that's the full process. The work that makes AI copy good happens before AI writes anything. It's the research, the validation, the language bank, the brief. That's the real job. AI just speeds up the production once all of that thinking is done and all of that stuff is put together. So I made a free guide that walks through all 7 steps in detail, what to do at each stage, where AI fits, and what to edit before moving to the next step. If you want to just build this out yourself, that guide is linked in the description. It's completely free. Now, if you'd rather have us do it for you, we build the entire system for our clients using this exact process, but with a full library of winning VSLs, ad scripts, conversion data, best practices, and basically all of the up-to-date context on what's working right now in 2026. We've also spent hundreds and hundreds of hours refining and improving our prompts and all the intricate steps that we use in crafting the creative brief and the assets. If you want to see what that would look like for your business, there's a link below to book a call with us, and we'll walk you through your current situation together and see if it makes sense. Thanks for watching.